Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. And each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry, and we're joined by a remarkable guest today, Filip Markiewicz, who is co-founder and CEO at Iodo. Hello, Filip. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Barry.
Pleasure. How are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Good start to the week.
Yeah, summer's not with us quite yet, is it? It seems to be dashing in and out, but hopefully.
Absolutely. Not yet, but we had a good weekend. So it's the sun's poking itself out every now and then. It's teasing us.
Yeah. So another thing to tease you with, can you just tease us with your bit about yourself and also the company that you work at?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my name's Filip. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Iodo. And Iodo is an intelligent delivery management system or software using real-time optimization and real-world insights to automate the role of operations managers and improve the efficiency, reliability, and sustainability of last-mile delivery. And we've been building for the last year, and we're pretty excited to launch the business. We've already been testing with a few customers, and we're really excited to kind of sink our teeth into this ongoing problem of last-mile delivery complexity and to be building the future of logistics.
So the company's name is really interesting, and as we were talking earlier, I was debating between Yodo and Iodo. So what's the choice behind the name?
There's quite a story behind Iodo. It's not that exciting, but we, as founders, there's three of us, and we all come from different backgrounds. The COO, Shem, is Polish. I'm Polish as well, but I was born and raised in London. He was born and raised in Poland, and our CTO is Colombian. And we all have slightly different tastes in terms of style, in terms of naming. So we went through over 150 different names when we were exploring what to call our business. Went through a few options and really wanted a name that we could all pronounce in various different languages. We decided, eventually after a few iterations, decided on Iodo, which ultimately stands for Intelligent Optimization of Delivery Operations. So there is meaning behind the four-letter word, but it's interesting how, despite wanting to go for simplicity of the name, everyone still has their own interpretation of how Iodo is pronounced. So hopefully that means that people spend more time thinking about it, and therefore it's ingrained in their minds. But it does stand for something relevant to the industry.
Nothing wrong with a bit of controversy to get your name out there, is there? Get some brand recognition.
Some of the options that we went for before Iodo, had a bit more controversy associated to it. But we decided.
I'm sure that's another video.
Exactly. Your listeners could drop me a message if they want to find out.
And please do, yes. If they are interested, please do that. What was your life like prior to starting Iodo?
So I've had quite a bit of a mixed background. So my original dream was to go into medicine, but I ended up going into biomedical sciences. I studied biomedical sciences and actually did a PhD in biomedical sciences, specifically in the effects of aging and vibration on neuromuscular function, using locusts as animal models. So that was a good 3 to 4 year period sitting in a lab with no windows, playing with locusts and seeing analyzing how their legs work. And I decided I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a lab. So then moved into general consulting, joined EY and spent the next 5 to 5.5 years there, and also joined another boutique consultancy. And during that time, spent did a number of projects in the mobility space and really fell in love with the idea of what mobility would look like in the next 10, 20 years. So specifically started to specialize in innovation and growth strategy for mobility companies. But then after the next kind of that 6 year period, really decided I wanted to explore something with a bit more impact or a bit more immediate impact, and then started getting interested in the startup world. Toyed with a few ideas with a business partner, and eventually decided to join an incubator called Antler. And during Antler offer a 10-week program. They invite individuals who want to start a business, and they provide an environment for you where you can meet your co-founders, explore ideas, then kind of validate them, build them out, pitch to the venture capital firm, and if you're lucky, get some investment. So that's where I met my co-founders, Shem, who's got a background in delivery operations and hospitality, and is an absolute weapon when it comes to operations. And our CTO, Pablo, who spent time with automotive and mobility brands like JLR, Bentley, and more recently with Arrival. And he's an autonomous and connected systems specialist. So we kind of knocked our heads together and realized that we're all quite passionate about about solving kind of the big problems. And I think last mile delivery is a notorious problem in the delivery space, but also how we can leverage kind of modern technology, obviously AI, big data, machine learning, to not only solve the problem of last mile delivery, but kind of redefine how logistics works in today using this technology. And so that's really where the vision behind Iodo was born. And as I kind of mentioned at the start, what our vision rests on two pillars. One is kind of making the life of operations managers in these delivery companies, whether it be Amazon or some of the smaller businesses, making those lives easier by automating processes that they do day in, day out, like consolidating orders, putting out fires throughout the day when their delivery drivers come up against challenges like traffic or road closures. We're building a system that will be able to will update the delivery plans in real time. But also, then the other pillar is this real world learning engine. There's a lot of data out there that existing platforms will use, but for example, traffic or weather. But there's a lot of insight that is missing in terms of filling the gaps in between, or creating a picture of of real world dynamics is still pretty challenging, still pretty difficult. So, which in turn makes it difficult for the existing systems to offer relevant and the kind of, let's say, real world recommendations for how to improve delivery operations. So that's what we're doing. We're automating the role of the operations manager and also creating this real world learning engine that learns from the environment and provides recommendations specific to those.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that. How do you go from like medical sciences to that? Is that like just the next step, or is that just a change of heart and just throwing out to a new interest?
I still love the medical side. I still love the biomedical side, and I'll always be fascinated by how the human body works. But I've reflected on this a lot over the last, let's say, 5 years, because even during my time in consulting, before I started specializing in mobility and innovation strategy, what I loved was moving from project to project. I spent a lot of time working in government, for example, with insurance companies, banking, global conglomerates. And what I love is sinking my teeth into complex problems. Any sort of problem that needs a solution and gives me an opportunity to learn about a new industry. So, but what's interesting about the mobility space is that it affects every part of our lives. And it's often something that sits in the background. Particularly in the delivery space, we now live in a world where we come to expect Amazon-style delivery times, next day delivery, free, and customers are increasingly demanding greener deliveries, cheaper deliveries, more flexible deliveries. And that's it's still such a huge problem, huge challenge, but it's also something that's really close to everyone, whether they realize it or not. So that's how I've kind of moved from these various different industries, different sectors. But there's the curiosity angle and there's the obsession with just solving problems angle as well. So it's quite exciting because it gives me the opportunity to learn more about this new world. But by providing an outside perspective, in contrast to other people like my co-founder who spent the last 16 years in operations, I like to think I can provide a outside the box perspective, and which gives us an advantage to coming up with solutions that might be different to other existing solutions on the market.
It's nice to hear that excitement, and I can hear that you're very passionate about it. You're almost like making me passionate about it, and I don't do anything about it, so that's interesting. Okay, so like what tech trends are currently catching your attention within the industry, and like what are the driving factors behind their significance?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge number of these of tech trends, and it probably won't come as any surprise that AI, sensor technology, kind of big data, Internet of Things, those standard headline technologies are obviously kind of at the forefront of a lot of this development. But what's interesting, well, one of the main drivers is this vision of the smart city. There's a number of different businesses that will quote or will kind of paint you a picture of the 15-minute city, for example, or maybe some suggesting even lower times, but there's definitely a boundary there where it becomes a bit impractical. But it's not only the technology itself that's growing, but it's public awareness and business awareness of these technologies, as well as the urgency to adopt these technologies to stay competitive. And that's one of the big drivers of us as a business is how do we support or how do we create something that enables and empowers small businesses to compete with the larger behemoths that we know in the industry, like your the big players like DPD, UPS, but also Amazon, of course, which is redefined what we've come to expect from deliveries. How do we create a software solution that is relatively off the shelf and help small businesses compete in that market and stay competitive, because they notoriously suffer from incredibly tight, incredibly low operating and profit margins. So that's one of the big drivers of us. Of course, the solution that we build will be relevant and useful to the large players as well, which is, that's going to be quite exciting as we redefine how operations and delivery operations specifically are conducted. But we're really excited to be helping the smaller businesses to stay competitive.
I'm always curious, like when you go into this kind of business and you have an idea of what is going to happen in the future, and then you get feedback from consumers and stakeholders, has anything been surprising and you thought, oh, actually, I didn't expect it to go this way? Or were you so wise that you knew and predicted everything that they would demand?
I think we're still very early in our journey. And I think this is what excites me. When we were talking earlier about the move of my careers, as much as I love the curiosity and I love the problem solving, the thing I love about the world of startups more broadly is this idea of, it's essential for you to keep your finger on the pulse of what your customers are looking for, but your customers don't know what they want to a certain extent. I mean, maybe this is something that we've learned. I learned from my consulting days, which notoriously clients don't know what they want. It's always different to what they say when you first sign the contract. But I love this customer discovery phase where we've conducted over 100 interviews with business leaders in the delivery space. And they've all said some slightly different things. They all have slightly different pressures, but there is a common denominator, which is flexibility and adaptability, which is why we're building this kind of real-world, real-time adaptable software that can automatically adjust deliveries based on what the data is saying, rather than the operations manager having to sit by a computer and code it in. But it's really exciting that, we're staying very close to our customers and building something, then putting it in front of them, collecting that feedback, and then iterating again. So we're still, when you say, is there a surprising thing that our customers have said that has kind of caused us to maybe change our direction or build something new, we're still in the thick of that process. It happens almost on a daily basis. So while it's stressful on one hand, because of course we'd all like to make huge amounts of money and live a comfortable life knowing that we have built exactly what all customers want. It's also really exciting because it means we're trying to not only meet the needs of such a diverse group of customers, but also find that common denominator. What is the common thread? What is the real root cause of their pains and struggles? And right now, our hypothesis is that flexibility and the adaptability. But and that's what we're building, and we're regularly getting that feedback from customers. But of course, we are, as I said, we're still in the thick of the route towards product market fit and building something that is going to scale globally. But it's an exciting journey, albeit stressful. Double-edged sword.
I can imagine. You're coping very well. You seem pretty calm for someone in this position, so it's good. Okay, could you just outline a little bit about your primary focal points and any ongoing projects or endeavors?
Yeah, I mean, the primary focal points right now is we're working on how we're improving how do we improve the sustainability. So while we're working on the core of the product as well, we are also thinking about how can we use the real-time adaptability or the real-time optimization and the real-world learning engine that we have to improve the sustainability of last mile delivery. And there's a number of businesses out there on the market that will offer entire solutions for businesses, but that's quite a commitment. We've spent a lot of customers, actually, to answer one of your earlier questions. One thing that's interesting that we've learned from customers is that they do like to keep, particularly the smaller businesses, they like to keep their deliveries in-house. So they will have their own fleet of drivers that they trust and know and can depend on. And so one of the things we're looking at is how do we empower these sorts of businesses that have these in-house fleets, in-house drivers, to improve the sustainability or kind of reduce the environmental impact of their deliveries. And that could be providing anything from emissions data to very specific recommendations on how they can improve that. So that is really what we're focusing on right now. We've been lucky enough to win grants from Innovate UK to support that work. And so that is kind of the area that we've got. As I said, we're building the core optimization engine and the learning engine for the product, but also working, like, discovering how we can use that to improve the sustainability without compromising the overall efficiency of the product. So that's our focal point right now.
And how do you keep up to date with the latest developments, especially considering the rapid pace of change within the industry at the moment?
Yeah. It's a really, really good question. Countless newsletters. I think my inbox is flooded daily with newsletters from various different channels. Keeping in touch with a lot of other founders in the space, primarily through LinkedIn, of course. So, but as you say, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of changes about this information. But what I find, I think everyone finds this now, there's a lot of information that is maybe, because there's a lot of channels for information, it makes it that much harder to determine the credibility of the sources. So most of the time I really try to focus on the information I get from our customers, as well as the information we get from investors who are active in the space. And kind of I piece all of this information together. And that's probably one of the hardest things that I'm kind of experiencing in this startup world. Most important thing for me in terms of keeping up to the information is making sure that it's relevant. So, having those conversations with customers, really listening to what their needs are, listening to investors, because they're essentially our customers as well. They have certain needs. And they will often have the closest finger on the pulse of what the industry needs. So there's a combination of listening to those more immediate needs and then also kind of keeping in touch with the kind of much larger technical developments. And I'm not a technical founder, so I don't stress myself out too much with the real technical developments. I leave that to the CTO. But finding that middle ground between this kind of outrageous vision that you have for the future, smart city future of last mile delivery and urban logistics, as well as just being very close to what our customers really need and what our investors need to see as well. Finding that the middle ground between those two camps is what I think is the most important thing for us to focus on.
And you've linked to networking there a couple of times. First, when the company first started, and even now you mentioned LinkedIn and just keeping in touch with other small businesses. How important is networking? Do you still have the same value? Do you value it the same level you do now as you did when you first started? Or is it something that kind of falls off the radar a bit as you develop?
It is probably one of the most important things I have found. I like to think I'm good at networking when I'm in the midst of networking. But when I get stuck into a problem that I'm solving at my computer, networking kind of falls behind the scenes because it requires effort to go to these networking events, decide which ones are the good ones to go to, keep engaged with your investors and your peers as well. But I think it's a message that I heard a lot when I was in my consulting years. Everyone used to say, your network is your net worth, and it's really important to maintain your network. I thought I understood it back then, but I didn't. I understood it more, or at least I didn't understand it at all until I started this business and realized how much power there is in having a network to lean into for advice, for money, for customers, for ultimately, I think startups are built on networks. And so now I'm in a position where I working very, very focused on building the product, or kind of working closely with the rest of the team to build the product, but making sure that I'm also getting out there every now and then to get to know other entrepreneurs, other investors, other leaders in different fields, because you never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to what you're going to learn from these individuals. And I think it's important in the entrepreneurial world or in the startup world to stay quite, I want to say humble, and realize that there's so much you don't know, which is both exciting, also nerve-wracking, as I mentioned earlier on. But that way you realize that it's not, I think there's a number of sayings out there about how there's no I in team. It's not an individual that builds a startup. It's an ecosystem, whether it be of your co-founders, your team, your suppliers, your investors, your customers, your fellow peers. And I'm learning more and more how powerful that whole ecosystem is. So I do try to get out to networking events regularly, but it is something that requires patience because you never know who you're going to meet. And sometimes you have this huge aha moment. You meet someone and they just open huge numbers of doors. But other times you go and you don't really meet anyone where there's a spark. But you have a couple of interesting conversations and then you move on to the next.
Really interesting. And unfortunately, we are slightly coming towards the end of the interview. But just before we do, since we're talking about the importance of networking and how instrumental it has been for you, what other advice or what other pieces of advice would you give to someone who is maybe an entrepreneur just starting or just about to start?
I'd say get yourself into a community of other entrepreneurs. I was lucky enough. I tried a few projects or businesses before I joined Antler. But the beauty of Antler, the most important thing that Antler gave us was a community of like-minded entrepreneurs. And it's a group. There was about 70 of us in our cohort, and some of those individuals got investment at the end, like us. We were lucky enough to get the investment. Others didn't manage to form a team or get the investment, but we're still very close. We're still in touch, and they still have the entrepreneurial bug, the ambition to start a business. And the startup journey is incredibly tough. Not only because the problems you're often solving are challenging and complex, but because often you find yourself in times where you cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I might have an advantage because I did the PhD, and it's a very similar journey with the PhD, that you just keep banging your head against the wall, not knowing whether you're making any impact on breaking the wall down. And then eventually in the PhD suddenly you wake up and you're like, wow, I've finished. I can just submit. And it's the same with the startup, that it is, whether you're talking to investors, customers, building a product, whatever it is you're doing, sometimes feels like you're banging your head against the wall and with no feedback, no idea of whether you're making progress in the right direction. And it's the community of like-minded entrepreneurs, also advisors, who will give you the reassurance that you're not the only one, that it's part of the process, but also can give you advice on how to get through it, how to change your perspective, but ultimately just motivate you to keep going. I think it's important to not keep doing the same thing when you've got evidence that it's not working. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, with no adjustment. Yeah, finding yourself a community of like-minded entrepreneurs. And there's countless networking events for entrepreneurs, not specifically for those who are looking to raise money, but just to get together, share ideas, I actually run one myself in East London. So if anyone's looking for one, it's just called East London Entrepreneurs. And the ethos behind that is just to bring people together, to share ideas, to have a bit of a moan about the hardship of entrepreneurialism. But it's so empowering as well. As soon as once you've got all the complaints out onto the table, the next step is to start thinking, right, how do we solve it? What's the next solution? Entrepreneurs are notoriously solution kind of driven or problem solvers. So if you can get yourself that community, you find a group of people who understand the hardship you're going through and can point you in a direction with solutions or actually give you the solution. And that was the most powerful thing for me, because every day I need to find a way to motivate myself. And I, more often than not, find that from either my co-founders or the community that I surround myself with.
Philip, that was incredible advice. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And unfortunately, we have come to the end today, but it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Filip Markiewicz, co-founder and CEO at Iodo.